So while glutamate is essential, right, for learning and memory, right, via these NMDA receptors, you can get changes in the strength of connections that can record, ongoing experience and activity for later recall. It turns out that high levels of glutamate release and high levels of NMDA stimulation, it turns out are neurotoxic. They actually will kill brain cells. Domoic acid, it turns out, is a toxin that is produced by an algae bloom that sort of works its way up the west coast. And it will end up, when it arrives at certain locations, they'll close, the shellfish or crab or fish season because these organisms will actually, absorb this toxin and can pass it on to humans. And it actually, this domoic acid looks a little bit like glutamate, but it turns out it stimulates those same postsynaptic receptors, and it can provoke overstimulation and therefore toxicity. It can actually damage the brain. And actually, in Capitola, California, back in the 60s, there was an incident where there was a big domoic acid bloom, and seagulls and other shorebirds actually ate a lot of shellfish that were associated, that were contaminated with this domoic acid, and they started to crash into cars and buildings and telephone booths and everything else in town. And this was the basis for Alfred Hitchcock, to produce his famous movie called The Birds, where the birds go crazy and attack a town. It turns out that high glutamate, stimulation actually may also be part of what produces tissue damage when somebody suffers a stroke, right? So loss of blood flow from a stroke actually often provokes massive release of glutamate, a lot of activity in the neuron. It's sort of a seizure sort of activity. And this can end up proving toxic to those cells. And this may be mediated by NMDA receptors because, again, remember, they're active and permit the influx of calcium and all these changes, internally, only under high levels of activity.